Hello, Ogemdi. Yes.
Hi, how are
So
you?
very good. Well, a little nervous speaking to you, quite frankly. I've been immersed since the wee hours of the morning, going through uh, the package of things I have and reading your bio. And my God, you're a very ambitious woman, and you've done a lot of things.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
So the very first thing I would say is that we're really honored to be doing the U.S. premiere of this work, Major, which as I've seen a good deal of performance, but I truly do think it's new ground that
Mm-hmm.
you're breaking, and maybe we can dig down in that. The what these sofa chats are. The
Mm-hmm.
the rap I give is that when we made this merger, I don't know, it was now 16 years ago, I think. Um, I was concerned that New York Live Arts was seen as a kind of place where an elite showed work that didn't have anything to do with even the people in the neighborhood. There was a
Mm-hmm.
downtown crowd of people, and I thought, okay, well, a lot of it was people left feeling that the artists were exploring things that, quite frankly, they didn't know. And they left feeling a little stupid or something. So I said,
Mm-hmm.
well, why don't we set up conversations where the artists get to be themselves, and I will be one of those stupid people. And so my questions, I hope you're not offended. Some of them are maybe very basic. But you are speaking from several cultures that I really am not familiar with. They're not my culture.
Mm-hmm.
I was raised in an African American family, migrant family, upstate New York. I was 17. I went to Woodstock. No, I was not in Harlem at the the celebration of in Harlem. Um, I went to the university to do art, and I got attracted to this thing called modern dance. What was modern dance? I knew there was Martha Graham and so on. I knew there was Mr. Alvin Ailey, but that was somehow, it seemed like a specialized group of people doing something that was beyond me.
Mm-hmm.
The avant garde found me, and we had a whole language around the avant garde that led me to New York and, quote, the downtown art scene. So up front, and I don't know what your language is, you're a very well educated person, Princeton and so on. What language of art have you been involved in? Mine was a lot about what should and should not be done.
Mm-hmm.
What is our relationship, if at any at all, to history? Uh, in those early days, yes, the art world was primarily white people, but I don't think they knew that.
Mm-hmm.
They or no, they thought it was white people. They didn't
Mm-hmm.
have to think anything else. And it's my generation, and now your generation has taken the issue of identity to another level. And I believe that everyone is well, many people are more aware now of what they
Mm-hmm.
don't know. So I say that as a way of a preamble to this conversation. I hope that you'll allow me to have with you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, it says here, I'm also reading from my notes, so please, my eyes, if I'm looking away from you, it's because I'm trying to get it right. I would like to get closer to your artistic vocabulary. This is taken from the materials that we at New York Live Arts put forward, but I see even on your website it is. Major is a dance theater project exploring the physicality, history, sociopolitical interiority of majorette dance, a form that originated in the American South within historically Black colleges and universities in the 1960s. Um, uh, there are some words and concepts and notions used here to describe major, and uh, I would like to know what your feelings are. First of all, are you a do you make dance theater?
Mm-hmm. I say that I make dance theater. I say that I make dance theater because I have both a dance and theater background, and my approach to dance is coming as the body as an extension from language, and my approach to language is coming as language as an extension of the body. And so I was always really immersed and excited by playwrights like Susan Laurie Parks, who were very integrated into how do we make the voice physical, whether or not that's actually using the voice or just considering the ways that we communicate and how the body becomes a core part of that communication. And so I know dance theater kind of takes from Pina Bausch and the ways that we consider like these large, immersive, and like very narrative, almost evocative works.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not always pursuing narrative, but I am pursuing a connection between how we can think about work, both evolving in theater and dance as a shared language and intersection of each other. And therefore, my work always feels like it touches on theater and doesn't solely rely
Mm-hmm.
on dance.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, are you an activist?
That's a great question. I would like to be, I would aspire to be, but I also leave space for that not always being my place. I think
Mm-hmm.
that I consider myself someone who is steeped in socio-political movements, who feels very passionately about what it means to engage with community and what it
What
means to
what
live.
what social political movements?
So my biggest concern in life is the well-being and the uplifting of Black femmes and queer people. I'm very much concerned with our livelihoods, with how we are able to be protected. I'm also a doula, so I'm really immersed
Mm-hmm.
in the ways that we can support Black birthing people and intervene in the Black maternal mortality crisis. But I think of my role in the sociopolitical practice of protecting and uplifting Black femmes and queer people as one in which it's necessary for me to employ, treat well, gather, care for, nourish, and nurture within my community. I am someone who I show up at protests, I do my readings, I do my calling of senators, all the things that I can do, but I also recognize that I'm not an organizer and that I'm
Mm-hmm.
someone who's engaged with community. I used to work at the public theater in their public works department, where our practice was going to different social service organizations that were primarily of Black and Brown folks and making sure that they felt engaged both in theater as a way of expressing the world that is around them and whatever struggles or triumphs that they're dealing with, and then making sure they feel immersed in the creative process. That was my role there. And so community engaged arts has been an integral part of where I see myself in socio-political movements, but I
Mm-hmm.
also recognize that I'm not the person organizing protests. I'm not the person at the head of movements in really particular ways. And I like to think of myself as coming from a place of nourishment and being a nurturer.
Mm-hmm. Well, beautiful and generous answer. Well, why don't we just go to this because this is a question I always have. For years, people would say to me, uh, "Well, it was interesting, but it seemed to be more about politics than about art." And I
Mm,
thought, what the hell do they mean? What do they mean by art? So I've over the years been trying to distill it down into what they might have meant. And I'll ask you in this way: what about beauty? What about poetry?
mm,
What about the mysterious in life?
mhm. I really I really resonate with those terms. I resonate with those terms in the rehearsal room. I think it's hard for me to contend with them in perception of the word.
Mm,
I think that I'm still in like that stage of like young and scrappy where after a performance, if someone says, that was really beautiful, I'm like, what else do you think? Like, besides the beauty, what else do you think? But I do think that when it comes to being in the rehearsal room, when it comes to research development and engaging with my collaborators,
mhm,
it should feel a sense of beauty, a sense of poetry, a sense of soothing. And that soothing doesn't mean that we aren't challenging ourselves, that we're not taking risks, that we're not engaging in the uncomfortable and the disgruntled. But I think it means that we choose to be in the room and we choose to be in this practice because it is necessary to us and not necessarily because it's a privilege or like this thing that is bigger than us, but it's because it's something that's a part of us and necessary
mm,
to us. And I think particularly because I only employ Black femme dancers in my work, and it's just, and it hasn't necessarily been from a desire to not work with other dancers, but it's been from an understanding that when I'm in a room with my community, we don't have to always consider the implications of everyone else. And I
Mm,
think for a long time, I was asked and also kind of forced to engage in situations where I had to contend with, like, well, how does white supremacy make its way into your work? And like, how do you think
mm,
about decolonizing the space and how you make work? How is your work impacted by the existence of whiteness and the way that it sits in
mhm.
your work? And I'm just like, I would love to just go into the space, to go into the room, and to not have to work on the implications of all of those other parts. I would love to be in the room and be able to just dig immediately into what it means to be in that communal environment, and to also make people feel like when they bear witness to the work that they are getting this voyeuristic like perspective into the beauty of bringing together Black femme
That
community.
they are or are not getting.
Are.
They
Yeah, so
are.
that,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's one of my questions now that, we're just going right for it. For instance, I was going to say, you've been touring a lot. You were in Germany, and the bodies on your stage are decidedly. First of all, let's be clear about when you say femme, you're not saying female. You're saying
Mm.
that sounds like a category that I can imagine some queer people, trans people of non uh, would be able to attach themselves
Mhm.
to. Uh, why femme and not female?
So I think of femme because the way that I feel most connected to other people is through femness and not through femaleness. And I say that because when I consider my community, I consider non-binary folks, I consider trans folks, I consider queer folks of a variety of identities and approaches. And I think that the existence and desire to connect with femme, whether or not that's the feminine, whether or not that's expressions of like elegance, indulgence, or however you would like to use that word.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's where I feel more connected
Mm,
versus a cisgender ideology of what female is.
mm-hmm.
I don't feel like I'm thinking in a gender essentialist way. I would like to think in a way of, do I feel like when I'm talking about my community that my trans friends next to me who identify and express their identity through femme, if that feels like we can connect, a connecting point. And to me, my identity is kind of sought through the ways I connect with other people versus who I am as an individual. I am a cis woman, I am a female, but when I think about the ways that I connect to people, I'm connecting through my expressions of feminist and my
Mm,
understandings of what that feels for me. And so it always felt like important, it always felt important to me to make sure that the people coming into the work, and even when we did auditions for the project, what I said was, I'm like, is this project is for Black femmes. You can self-identify. I'm not going to police you. I'm not going to say what you're supposed to look like, what femme is supposed to show up like, but you need to know that when we're in the room, we're going to be coming from a Black femme sensibility
mm-hmm.
and from a Black femme history. And does that feel, when I say Black femme, do you feel like, oh, I feel close to that? I feel connected to that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a self identifier that connects us in community more than an objective and biologically essentialist identity, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense, and that's the battle line right now because those I won't speak for you, but the other uh, 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 conservatives, MAGA, whatever, they want to say that we are doctrinaire, that
Mm,
we are self censoring, that we have defined, we've split up the world into these rigid groups of people, whereas they stand for a world where everyone is, they say we judge people by their um, surface appearance more than their heart. And
mm,
I think there's complexity in your answer, but you understand how it could be said that you make for a community that's self-identified, This is what we are. This is who we
Mm,
are. And I don't have a problem with it. As a matter of fact, it's kind of refreshing and clear. But you must get some pushback on that.
mm. Yeah, I think that I haven't gotten as much pushback as I would think. I think it's because one of the challenges I do get is when people are like, when are you going to hire other people? And I'm just like, I don't know. I always say to my friends, I'm like, oh, I'll let y'all know when I have my like ethnically diverse piece. But I'm just like, for now, my questions, my work, my research is really connected to like the ways that I see and identify myself.
Hmm.
And I don't think that there's a problem with that, and I think it's what I can take care of most readily at this
Hmm.
moment in my life. I do feel like in terms of what, how people need to connect and identify, um, I think that we just need to give people space. And I think that it's always the thing of like, what do you need to say about yourself? How do you need to connect to others? And
Hmm.
whose business is it besides your own? And so I really feel like, and I come from like a community that is really steeped in like cisgender ideology, like an understanding of like, this is this way and this is this way. Like I come from like a Christian Nigerian community, and I'm not saying that everyone who is a Christian Nigerian has like a specific way of thinking, but I'm saying that there were still ways that I was raised to know who I am, but then the
For
ways
instance, there
that
are only two genders,
yes,
male and
exactly,
female. And
yes,
this is what a woman's role, this is what a man's role is.
yes,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
But it didn't necessarily, that never felt like the ways that I then found family and community. And so I'm
Hmm.
going to follow the ways that I find chosen family and community more so than the ways that we have been taught through, like, gender roles in Nigeria were very transformed through colonization.
Hmm.
Deeply, like, there were a lot of ways to, like, there was a lot of really queer approaches to the ways that people interacted in relationship in Nigeria before colonization.
Hmm.
And so that's why I'm also like, that's not on us. But yeah, I think to me it's a huge, be in your own self, be in your own, like your own sensation of how you want to connect with people. And if you don't understand it, it's just not your business.
And that's I hear a trans uh, community saying, "Child, you do you."
Exactly.
That's it, right? Okay. Well, it's a wonder that you're so clear, and I really appreciate it. I hope someday we get a chance to sit down and talk, because you see, because I come from the counterculture of the 1960s,
Mm-hmm.
and it was you are not your body.
Mm.
Turn on, tune in, drop out. The image of Woodstock and all of these shaggy white people. And then there's a handful of us who are black and brown. But it was cool because that was the revolution and the world's going to. Okay. Now I've had a dance company now for soon to be 40, 50 years. And it is mixed. So I have always given myself that what I thought was liberation, but it is now, as I understand it, as I try to go deeper into my individual identity, I do have to take consideration, or I choose to, who that small Jewish woman is there, who
Mm.
this blonde man from Minnesota is, and what they have to do with the questions and all. So it's quite a balancing act, and my hat is off to you that you're so clear about it and you're making such powerful work out of it. And I hope to be on the sidelines watching as it goes forward. Um, Here's some terms I thought that I would throw out at you. From that very first sentence, and maybe you just riff. I'm not asking you to. Uh, for instance, let's start with the idea of history.
Mm-hmm.
Just an idea. What is your when I say history? What happens for you?
When history comes up, particularly in relationship to major, I'm thinking of who do I regard on the route to using this practice. and who do I regard thoroughly and pay respects to in a very clear way because they gave me the gift of this practice. As I said, I come from Nigerian parents, but I was raised in Stone Mountain, Georgia, raised in the Deep South, and learned what my culture was based
Mm.
off of who was outside
That's pretty
and the way
south.
that
Stone Mountain is pretty south.
Stone Mountain is really south. And so I learned my relationship to my blackness both through what blackness was in my home and through a sense of Nigerianness, and then what blackness was out in Black America and through southernness. And so that intersection really asked me to get perspective of what my privileges were as a Black person who was not a descendant of slaves, but who
Mm.
parents immigrated here, but then also to understand my obligation in my community to what Black America is, what Black America made me, and what I am as a Black American as well. In the terms of like being Nigerian American who was Black, there is still like I still then
Hmm.
am connecting to what being Black in America is, right?
Hmm.
And so to me, I'm thinking about the histories of the people who have invited me in and shown me what it means to be Black here. And I'm also thinking about the
And you've
history.
accepted that take on, many of us African Americans of a certain generation said those Caribbean peoples and those African people, they look down their nose at us because
Mm,
they say, well, let's say the Africans, we ain't never been slaves. You
mm,
have, right?
mm.
And that there's fundamental difference, but you feel that you have been accepted. And how big a difference is that from somebody who has, as I do, the distant ghost shadow of being an enslaved person?
Mm.
How has that affected your in the U.S. your dealings with Black people?
Yeah. I think the way that it impacts me and that it impacts the work is that I'm always trying to have a moment of like, these are my ideas, but also let me respect and recognize our differences while also understanding the intersections of colonization, the Atlantic slave trade, the ways that things were impacted in Nigeria and the ways that the histories of what happened to Black folks in America. And I think that I'm not ever going to try to like trauma compare or like or get in on online. I don't know if you've ever heard about the diaspora wars, but that's a huge thing where people get online and it's like the Black Brits, the Black Americans, and the Black Africans all come together to start fighting about who has it the worst. And
Oof.
I think that it, or who's like better than the other, right? And
Hmm.
so I think that for me, it was always necessary to be respectful and clear as to when I step outside of my house, who am I? Who do I become? Who am I perceived as?
Hmm.
And therefore, how can I make sure that I am being thoughtful to who I'm perceived as, but the histories that I did not hold? And even if I held my own history of colonization, the own history of oppression in Nigeria, where did my parents like make themselves like a guest in a new place? And how does them making themselves a guest in a new place make me grounded in that place? How can I also be connecting with like indigenous people with indigenous ancestry, with the ways that I respect and can care for and like uplift the land that I'm on and that I'm
Hmm.
nurtured by? But
Hmm.
I really think that like in the work it's often we're creating an archive and interviewing majorettes from different teams current and past to make sure that we're including the voices of the originators and the people who get this form to really continue outside of the context where we're taking things out of context, and we're making sure that we're figuring out ways to really put forth in the work like this is not majorette dance as it was originally formed. This is a grappling with what it meant for it to move through our bodies and what it meant for it to leave our bodies when postmodern dance and contemporary dance were kind of what we then were steeped in late teens and in
So
early.
do you feel like you were also steeped in postmodern dance?
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
that's interesting. As I was watching sometimes the beauty of the ensemble, I was thinking, oh, wait a minute, hold on. This is not African dance. This is some, but then I realized, well, the maker is actually an African American, and
Mm,
therefore there's sort of, with it, looking at African movement, we assume, as this Percival Board used to tell me, who was my Trinidadian instructor in West African and African Caribbean dance back in the 70s, he said, in Africa, there is a dance for every occasion in life.
mm,
And we have every strata, the small children, the uh, prepubescent, the young men about to become men, the young virgins about to become women, all of that. I guess your menstrual period, everything has. And I was watching, saying, "Oh, what's this feels like?" Well, the way these women are using those powerful backs and those uh, excuse me, those glorious behinds, the breasts and all it, and the way they are undulating and moving. No, this is not Beyonce. Maybe it is also Beyonce. This is
mm,
actually something else being um, presented. And
mm,
uh, so there is something Africanist in what you do.
mm.
Do you want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, I definitely think that with major, I'm considering what happened when it moved through my body. I was initiated into dance through majorette practice when I was younger. That was the first way that I like was taking dance seriously in my life. And
Mm-hmm.
then, but at the same time, I am exposed to like Afro beats. I am exposed to Nigerian parties. I am exposed to a really specific way of dancing and also just like to me, like before I understood what twerking was, I'm like, oh, we're twerking at Nigerian parties. Like this is, I'm like, this is like there's a really
Who owns
specific,
twerking? Who invented twerking?
I'm not gonna say. I don't
Oh,
know. I'm not gonna, I'm just as all black people can have it. Whoever wants it, everyone can have it. But I think that I think that when I talk about my work, I'm talking about like in my bio, I always say something like my work is an integration of the Afrobeat parties I was raised
mhm.
in growing up, of the postmodern dancing that I did in college, and of the majorette and football games that I would go to in high school. Like it's the ways that all of those are synthesized in me and how they confuse me. So
Mhm.
I think about the physicality as a point of confusion and not a specific regard for any form. And to me, major is about what happens when we attempt to get this form back, and how can we also cope with the fact that inconsistency in practice, not going to an HBCU, not completing it throughout high school, how that then makes us grapple with mastery. And when we're grappling with the inability to completely master a form, what frustration creates a newness in our body. And
Okay, now
so,
in terms of let's go to the original then. When I think of I meet when I hear majorettes, I confuse it with cheerleader,
mhm,
that sporting events, and I say wrote down quasi-militaristic social events where
mm,
these uh, oftentimes women, but not exclusively female women, uh, but they are there to cheer on the team.
mhm,
They are there, and I ask this question: are they the vanguard for something? That are they like almost the harbingers of the battle that's about to be
mhm,
fought? What was it for, and what
mhm,
is it that you want to resuscitate about it?
mm. With majorette dance, what I see as the difference with cheerleading is I'm so rooted in the undulation. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
this collective sense of a pouring out and in that in like a very clear regard for unison that comes up in majorette dance that feels like you're watching a single body roll, even though you're watching a whole team. When I
Mm-hmm.
think of cheerleading, I think of much more strict movements, images, and posing and posturing in a
Mm-hmm.
way that isn't necessarily the same aesthetic as majorette dance. But
Mm-hmm.
then again, every single team has a different like vibe to them, a different approach. But majorette dance was started I believe it was at Alcorn State where they wanted to like put down their batons when being like the people that the majorettes like that you now think of as like the predominantly white institution majorettes where they have like the batons and they're going with the band and stuff. But it was this sensation. There was like a group of Black women who were like, we want to put down our batons and we want to dance in the ways that we want to dance. And I
Mm,
feel like, yes, cheerleading is often regarded as something that supports a team. When I think of majorette dance, I think of that as the center of the football game. Like, I'm not watching the field, I'm watching the dancers in the stands, and I'm watching the relationship between, like, there's a relationship that feels like to me between the cheerleaders and the football team, and then there's the relationship between the band, one sound, and the majorettes, one body, one movement.
mm.
And so I think that both create really specific, a really like all four of those fulfill a really specific and full image of celebration in Black communities and within like Southern Black culture.
Celebration, not necessarily resistance or protest.
I think I don't necessarily I think that yes, everything can be resistance and protest, but I think of this as like a space of just like yes, excitement, fuel, like the pep rally. I think of it as the energy and the like resuscitation that you need for anything else that you're doing in this life.
Mm-hmm.
And so my favorite thing about watching majorettes at games is that you have all these people recording and just screaming and cheering so loud for the dancers and doing like really strong call outs. And to me, that is camaraderie in a way like you've never seen before. And I think that I'm so obsessed with what the drum major looks like, what the band looks like, the ways that the drummers and the drum line are finding coordination, the different formations that the band is making, and how those formations also fold into the majorette formations. But there's really this collectivity that's happening across the game with all of the different aspects, but then majorettes still exist in like in their individuality,
Mm-hmm.
exists in competition at Battle of the Bands, like in these dance battles, and then also in J setting and like the queer and trans communities that work with majorette practice in their grassroots teams that are outside of the normal formal functions that we think of with majorette dance. And that
Well,
is
how many teams? I mean, it's a whole. I'm telling you, you're really giving me an education here. How many teams? Is it regional? Is it the South still? How many teams exist, and what are they all at the same level of professional? If that you use that word for, or what is it? How do you describe?
That's a great question. I'm going to go ahead and say there are dozens and dozens of teams. I just looked up, there's 107 HBCUs in the country.
Mhm, mhm.
I have not heard of an HBCU not having a majorette team, but I could be wrong. And then, but also most, if not all HBCUs, the I feel like there's an HBCU in Jersey that I can't remember the name of, but I always, oftentimes people are thinking of like DC as like the
Mhm, mhm,
sometimes the farthest north
mhm.
we're going. And so it's still like there is, there are majorette dance groups now popping up at PWIs outside of HBCUs. That's created a whole other drama that people are
PWIs are.
predominantly white institutions.
I love these acronyms. Okay, yeah.
But that's creating its own level of drama in the majorette scene that I'm so curious about. And
So
that
they're inspired by the black ones. Is that
so
true?
they're still Black teams, but they're happening at non HBCUs.
Oh, I see. Ah, that's its
Yeah,
own thing. Yes. Yeah,
it's
yeah,
its
yeah,
own
yeah.
thing, and people really see it as, and as I respect it as like HBCU culture, and a lot of people are like it should not exist outside of this space.
Mm.
That is also a question in major. Like that's the question of like what happens when you love a piece of Black culture so much that you want to play with it everywhere, that you don't always want to play with it in context.
Hmm. And
And
context is important to you.
yes,
Now, this is what I'm looking at where your work has been. Every kind of hit downtown venue. You've been in Germany. You're traveling all the time. talk about context. How does that work? How do you feel about that?
I always say, even especially when I teach or when I'm going to spaces where I'm not surrounded by Black folks, right? Like I say, I'm excited to be working with you all. I'm excited to bring the way that I practice. I want to start this off by saying that I regard Black femme luminaries like Susan Laurie Parks, like Toni Morrison, people like BB Miller, Oakley. Like I'm thinking about all of them in the room when we work today. And
Hmm.
that's the sense that those are the people that I'm coming forth from. And so
Hmm.
let's make sure we're holding space for them in the room, in the work, as we take on like Black femme luminaries and Black femme academics, creators, artists, as people who are so necessary to the canon of creative life that have so often been left out of it. And so I'm learning to really figure out, like, how do I hold my own and hold the power of the people who taught me what it means to make art in the
Hmm.
rooms that I go to that are outside of the rooms where it's automatically like, oh, everyone looks like me. So it's we don't have to talk about what it means to like ground in this necessarily. But
Well,
it
just for a moment, what does it mean to make art?
oh, it
I know
means
it's a big question. It's a lifetime question, but what is your mantra? What is it?
I think mm, I make art because it feels necessary to me, and not necessary to me in a way like something that has been very important to me over the years is
Hmm.
to remember that my choreographic and theater practice is my job. When I
Hmm.
think of it as my job, I remember that I step into it, I need breaks from it. It is exhausting. It is a site of burnout. It's a site of excitement and joy, but it is both a gift and not. It is a
Hmm.
gift to be able to practice this, but it is not. I think that my work deserves to be as respected as any other realm that people are working in that is considered to be of more importance for a variety of like professionalized reasons.
You mean like
But
the discussion during COVID of who were essential workers?
And I don't think in especially during COVID, I'm first responders are the essential workers, doctors, nurses, those are it. I feel like art was necessary in
Hmm.
that time, but I also it goes back to the sensation of like I'm a nurturer. Like
Hmm.
I know that my work is important. I also am going to think about what context and what place in society my work is for, and I'm going to take care of myself as best I can when I'm in the practice of making art.
Hmm.
And so for me, making art is a place of excitement, but then also it's a way that I've learned to make sense of things. Like
Hmm.
performance studies, performance theorists, people like Tommy DeFrance, like they gave me language to understand what it felt like to be a body, what it felt like
Hmm.
to be a person dealing with like mental health issues, what it meant to feel like a person in community, what like when I started learning about what it means to be Blackness in an era of revolution and transformation, it was through performance theorists. It
Hmm.
was through an understanding of the dancing body. It was through thinking about bodies in motion as being bodies a part of a movement.
So this form, which you say very clearly, originated at historically Black colleges and universities in the 1960s.
Mm-hmm.
Is that significant? I mean, I think we might have gone over this, but maybe just worth dotting the i's. Were those persons, those femmes, were they thinking about adding their voice to the ferment of the time, the revolution? What?
That's a great question. And I'm so curious. I think that do any of us think we're going to be the revolution at the time that we're doing it, right?
Hmm.
And I think that there is much, there's so much to be said about the people who make us learn what it means to be in our bodies, the people who taught me how to dance, the people who taught me how to create space for dancing, those are the most special people in my life. Like they are the ones, and that includes my friends who I dance with today, right? It's not only top down, it's across, and it's chosen family, it's
Hmm.
peers as much as it is mentors. But
But now you're not mentioning your mother, your aunts, your
mm,
the I mean, those were the first femmes in your world, right?
mm,
You make a distinction though about being in your body.
yeah, I think that the women in my family were the first ones to teach me what it meant to be a woman.
Hmm.
And then when I started to want to know what it meant to be a femme, I wasn't necessarily in that same line of learning. Like something that was really key to my like I have it's me and two sisters and then a little brother, but my family, extended family is dominated by women and it's great. But my mom always dressed us up in the most feminine, sweet. We looked like Madeline. We were always in frilly dresses, church socks, everything, little kitten. Like it was so important, her makeup, like the whole thing. And then I went through a time, particularly at the end of college, where I was just like, do I like dressing like this? Or is this what I was taught? And then I went through like trying to dress in different ways that felt less feminine. And then I came back to it. I was like, no, I love it. I love it. It's mine. But
Mm-hmm.
it had to become mine. And so I think a lot of the ways that we're taught about what it means to present our gender, to present our identities, are fed to us through our families or the people most immediately around us. But
Mm-hmm.
we find a time in this life where we choose whether or not that is also of our own thought. And
Amen. Yeah.
yeah,
Amen.
yeah.
Amen. Yeah. We're using this time up really well. What is fierceness?
Ooh, ooh, fierceness.
Because you use it so well in your material. Fierce exploration,
Yeah.
fierce embodiment.
Fierce is just like, I think we fall away from the word angry a
Mm-hmm.
lot when it comes to Black women. Like that's a word we try to distance ourselves from for a variety of like stereotypical reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the heat and the desire and the pursuit and the energy and the like restlessness, to me, that's fierceness.
Mm.
Like that way of feeling like so grounded in desire for something beyond yourself, that desire to push, to move forward, to be like, yeah, to regard, to be in community with. To me, that is fierceness. And I think like there's just something so important about, yeah, there's something so important about the push, the energy, the
Mm-hmm.
evocativeness that is fierceness that just feels so fulfilling for me.
Mm-hmm. It feels necessary is a wonderful word that you use here. Um, uh, so, have you ever been a majorette dancer?
Yes. So I was a majorette dancer from like my critical age of like 11 to 14. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was so exciting as a way of, yeah, that was so exciting as a way of initiating me into dance. And then it became something that I then started doing contemporary and modern and ballet more in high school because I went to a boarding school. And then by the time I got to Princeton, I was doing a lot of postmodern dance, improvisation, and more experimental work.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I continued, particularly in postmodern practice after college, I then started being like, I want to go back to the root. And so I wanted to be a majorette dancer again, but I didn't want to forget all of the ways that I had learned to dance since then as well.
Mm-hmm. I am really impressed when I see your because I'm well, that was my next uh, my language and as you have probably noticed, my thinking have been greatly shaped by the conversations of the white downtown avant-garde and
Mm,
questions. Um, I'd like to hear from you if you have any responses to some of these. What about form?
mm.
What about style?
I'm finding it every day. Like I learned very clearly different forms and styles, but then I felt like I was cosplaying when I was repeating them. Like I felt like I was imitating instead of understanding my own physical language.
Mm-hmm.
Now I think that the only thing that really feels like form and style for me in my work right now is like shaking and trembling and quaking and raging and pushing. Like
Mm-hmm.
these terms that incite ideas of sensation more than they incite ideas of specificity and practice. And so I am very curious about approaches to form and formality in work and in dance practice. But right now, the thing that gets me to dance is the feeling and the sensation
Mm-hmm.
more than the specificity of how a body is supposed to pose and present and posture in relationship to another body.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What about who you make your work for? Who do you have in mind when you make your work?
Mm. Um, I am, who do I have in mind? I feel like when I make my work, I'm thinking about the weird little black girl who was in college, who was really excited when Kyle Abraham came and presented Pavement and was asking the dancers all these questions about what it felt to be in the work and feeling like, wow, someone came and saw me, someone came and saw me like in the audience and felt like they were making something for me. I feel like my work is for the people who so much of understanding of dance and community and artistry they felt abandoned and they felt like they didn't have language for, but now it has become something where they now it's become something where they feel like there's community, where they feel, I don't know, where they feel seen, where they feel trusted,
Mm-hmm.
where they
Mm-hmm.
feel like I didn't know what I could be, but now I'm seeing a little bit more clearly the
So could
potential
that person
practice.
be other than um, the gender and the definition of femme? Could it be another race? Could it be another culture? Could that be a person that has fits that description for you?
Yes, I definitely think that the person could be, sorry, give me 2 seconds. My
Yes,
cat
please.
is making so much noise. I'm sorry. Okay, she is calm. Um, I I definitely think that I could find it. I find it with so many people. Like I think about Jose Esteban Munoz and like disidentifications, and I think about these performance theorists, and I think about queer folks, I think about trans folks, I think about a range of folks. I think about the histories I share with different colonized people. I think about the movements that I've been involved in with other communities. And it feels like my community is not limited to Black femmes, but my community is expanded. Like I expand my understanding of community through what I've learned from Black femmes. I
Mm-hmm.
think about like Fred Hampton and the Rainbow Coalition. I think about the ways that we are meant to be tied to other people because we depend on other people to improve our lives and situations. And
Mm-hmm.
we, other people, should depend on us to improve their lives and situations.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that we're supposed to go anything alone. I think that we are obligated as human beings to care about people beside ourselves and to
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
use what has happened to us as a catalyst for caring about people besides ourselves.
Okay, we're getting near the end of our time. I just have a few questions that have become ever more focused, or I dare say, maybe personal. Um, this is uh, One of my favorite notions is that art happens when something is being pushed against.
Mm.
First of all, do you agree? And if so, what are you pushing against?
I'm pushing against the feeling that my body is supposed to stay still because it doesn't work in a specific way. I'm pushing against the sensation that I deal with a lot of chronic pain, but there is no way for me to move then. I'm pushing against feeling left out of dance spaces for a lack of perfect technique, for like not always understanding how to be in a space of virtuosity, but thinking that my energy and my desire in and of itself was virtuosic. And
And
so I
your intellect is certainly virtuosic. You
thank you.
know, it is. Um, how do you choose your performers, and who are they?
My performers always start with my best friend, Celia Hampton, who I've danced with since I was 14 years old. She's been in every single dance I've ever made. She works in tech, but she does everything with me. And it like she knows my brain more than I know it. And then from there, it started off by choosing friends. And then me and friends would get in the room and it'd be so much fun. And then also we'd be like, love you, but let's go into our separate rooms.
Mm-hmm,
Sometimes we don't always need to be working with our friends.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
In auditions for this piece, it was, I have never felt more excited by being in a room with a group of dancers who were so ready to jump in, to try, to effort. I feel like I could have made 1,000 different like organizations of the cast, but to me, everything that was really sticking out to me from the whole group of people who auditioned was this desire to connect with the history of their own body and how the history of their body brings them in community with others, and how it wasn't about mastering the form, but it was about attempting it with everything that you had. And
Yeah, well, wonderful. But what about your collaborators? Music, costumes, decor, sound.
mm, ooh, my musician Lambkin is was suggested to me by a friend, and their understanding of like the experimental meeting like traditional forms, traditional like drumline sounds, and like, but then also like trap and like female hip hop and all of that. Like they can explode all of that so beautifully. My archivist, Missy Robinson, is a dear friend who I started off by dancing with. And then she also was like, I want to translate the way that I document work through a practice that is visual. Um, Costumes, I was suggested Celeste, who is an amazing, amazing artist who's put together like costumes that she's from Arkansas. So I was like, yes, I need Black girl from the South. And like someone who was steeped in that history. My stage managers, Noah Laddie and Tanya Perez,
Here
both
is more
are
on Starbucks
people.
cold brew coffee concentrate.
Sorry,
It's okay.
Alexa, shut off. Alexa, close screen. She's listening to
um,
everything.
she
Okay.
listens to everything. But and then Sim Carpenter is an amazing scenic designer and lighting designer who really just like tunes into both what the literal feels like in the work, but then also the experimental surprises that we can bring out of the work.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many others who've been involved in the work who I'm so grateful to. And Sada Da Silva, who's my producer, who's just been like the hugest support system ever.
Mm-hmm. And here, more personal questions. What do you feel or think about our field, the dance performing world? What is
Mm,
your feelings about it at this moment? And in particular, its future?
mm. I think we need to continue to make space for young people. I think that and I think I'm like I'm a young person and I'm also talking about the people who are younger than me and I'm talking about the people who are younger than them. I pray for everyone for more mentorship, for more connection amongst us, for more regard for our elders, and for more um, desire to connect across generations and through generations. I'm excited that despite all of the strikes and like things and aggressions that have taken place against our livelihood and our well-being, that we still see this work as necessary, and we are still like implored to dance, to move, to create.
So
And
you're positive about the future of your field.
the future of the field, I have to be positive about it because there's no other option. Like
Well,
I
a
feel
lot of your colleagues who I've interviewed, almost all of them have said, I'm not feeling so good about the future. Now, it's great to hear this, hear you're being positive. Well, and I won't push it any further than that because we're out of time. And how are you feeling personally at this time? And how are you feeling about the future?
I feel deep gratitude. I'm thankful to Jalen, Janila, Song, Chanel, Sela, Camille, um, Kayla, all the people who I get to be in the studio with. And I feel like there's more for me because they have supported me so deeply. And I hope there's more for them because of the support that I hope to offer them in this practice.
I will have to let you go. I live an hour north of the city and I've got an appointment in the city in about an hour. This has really been a pleasure. And I do hope that we get a chance to sit and get to know each other a little bit better. We at New York Live Arts are very excited about you bringing this major to us. And all the best to you and happy holiday.
Thank you so much. I'm really grateful for this. Thank you.
Bye bye now.
Bye.